When I first heard about the coronavirus, I didn't think it was a huge deal. I felt like the media was kind of blowing it up and people were getting scared, and then seeing images of people like buying all the toilet paper made kind of other people want to do the same thing. And I honestly felt like I had no idea that it would turn into the crisis it's become.
To me, I was like, oh, it's just one of those things that after like a couple of days, it's going to be over. And then when I found out it was really crazy, I had to call friends and family and say, please, everybody stay safe, you know, and all that. And most especially those of us that have family back home in Africa, we have to call them to make sure that they stay away, you know, from people and stay very safe.
I heard about it like through social media around January, and it was kind of like just like something people were like kind of joking about, and I just didn't like think literally anything of it. I would say I like barely even thought about it until my school got shut down. It always seemed very far away, kind of like the Ebola whole thing that happened like in 2016. It always felt like it could like never get to me ever, and that's kind of how Corona felt at the beginning. And so even when my school shut down, I was still like barely even, it just didn't seem like it was real.
My first response was to be very cautious. I've been tracking it. Really, it's been in the news since November of last year, and it's starting in issues in China. So just kind of keeping an eye on it and wondering what it would develop into, if anything.
When I first heard about the coronavirus, I wasn't really overthinking it because the media was saying it like it was just like a flu, and like no one was really like talking about it, making it a big deal. Shelter in place wasn't mentioned at all. And so I wasn't really too worried about it like when I first heard about it.
My world became kind of stagnant. The day or the weekend of the start of the weekend of that shelter in place, my dad had passed away. It has been the craziest experience, and honestly, to this point, I'm still kind of like, I'm trying to get back into the mojo of things, but I'll tell you, you know, to bold honest truth, I didn't care about anything at that point. I didn't care what you put in front of me. I was just, all right, you know.
I didn't pay much attention to it. I thought it was another one of these hosts. I thought another one of these fake viruses, another one of these, you know, social media fake, whatever it was that they was trying to put together. But as time grew, I saw different changes.
The virus is called SARS-CoV-2 -2019 because that's when it was first identified. So if we look at the family of coronaviruses, there are several that cause human disease. We've known about 4 of them for 60 years almost. Those 4 cause a common cold. About a third of all the colds you've gotten are caused by coronaviruses. One of these 4. And our immunity to those lasts anywhere from about 1 to 3 years, and then we can get them again. So that's why they're a common cause of cold throughout our lives. There have been other strains of coronavirus that cause human disease. The SARS-CoV-1 that I talked about, that caused a terrible pandemic or a moderately bad pandemic that began in the fall of 2002, occurred in China. The Chinese didn't really tell anybody about it until late in January of 2003. By then it was exploding in other countries. Fortunately, the United States had very little problem with it at all. Canada had a fairly significant problem with it. It was not nearly as contagious as SARS-CoV-2, the one we're dealing with now, fortunately, because it had a mortality rate of just under 10%. That means 1 out of every 10 people who got infected with it died. So that was a very virulent organism. That is, it really caused a lot of human disease, but didn't spread well. The next coronavirus that we became acquainted with was in 2012, and that's called MERS, or Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome. And it primarily occurred in the Middle East, although there was an outbreak in South Korea. So it wasn't a pandemic, it was really an epidemic in those 2 countries. It continues to present. It's not very contagious at all, so it doesn't spread widely. But if you get infected with it, the mortality rate's around 45%. Nearly 1 out of 2 people who get infected with it die. Fortunately, it didn't learn how to spread effectively between person and person. That one came from bats to camels to human beings. SARS-CoV-1 came from bats to an animal called a civet, which is a cat-like animal, to human beings. So that brings us to SARS-CoV-2, the virus that's causing our pandemic now. That began in bats. We don't know if there was an animal in the middle, we call that an intermediate host, that the bats infected that spread to humans, or whether humans got it directly from bats. But unlike SARS and MERS, this particular coronavirus is very, very contagious. Fortunately, it doesn't have anywhere near the mortality rate, though, that SARS and MERS do. Imagine if MERS could spread like SARS-CoV-2.
Well, epidemic it could be like in one local area, like if it broke out in the nationwide, it would say epidemic, like we had measles here locally. But if it's pandemic, like it constricts the entire world, which like basically started in China, but then it migrated in Italy. So Italy had, it became epicenter Italy, because the more of a, I think for us, well, what I understood now, like we got more spread from people came from Italy, and that's how we got spread, especially in New York. So pandemic, like it started from China, then it went to Italy, and then we had first breakout, like what they say like in February, but it's like it goes as back as like in January. That's when we started having people, but it affects the entire world basically, this pandemic.
Is the worst yet to come, Dr. Fauci?
Yes, it is.
Can you elaborate?
Well, whenever you have an outbreak, that you can start seeing community spread, which means by definition that you don't know what the index case is, and the way you can approach it is by contact tracing. When you have enough of that, then it becomes a situation where you're not going to be able to effectively and efficiently contain it.
Hi, I'm San Francisco Mayor London Breed. I want to take this opportunity to provide you with an update on the coronavirus pandemic, the steps we're taking to protect public health, and finally, the responsibility that you have to make smart decisions and protect the health of those around you.
You can socially distance yourself from people in social settings by not going to bars, not going to restaurants, not going to theaters where there are a lot of people. It all just means physical separation so that you have a space between you and others who might actually be infected or infect you.
I want to talk a little bit about some of these new executive orders we've advanced. One of the most important things we can do, particularly in relationship to the tragic loss of another death of a senior, is really begin to flood the zone as it relates to our resources and make sure that we are utilizing all of our state resources, the health and Human Services Agency at our Labor Department to really focus with a deep prioritization on protecting our seniors and protecting caregivers to our seniors, not just in assisted living facilities and skilled nursing facilities, but in our regional centers, those with disabilities, and more broadly, those with compromised immunity. We want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to take the vast majority of state resources on the enforcement side of things, as well as the health and safety side, and just begin to reposition them to really focus on those that we're most acutely concerned about as it relates to the issues of COVID-19.
This is going to be a defining challenge unlike any we have faced in this city in a long time. We all have a responsibility as San Franciscans to look out for ourselves and each other. This is what is needed. First, stay home, unless it is absolutely necessary. Social distancing is the most important step we can take right now to limit the spread of the virus.
The impact to me was over 30 people I had to not necessarily lay off, but I could not employ. I did keep 12 on, and we have done this to-go thing for 4 weeks. It is really, really hard. We are probably the most successful restaurant in Oakland, and to lose that or give that up because of this, it was like, wow, this is so hard. So it was very devastating. I'm very, very loyal to my employees. To see them hurt, and you know, we assisted in every way possible, from unemployment to whatever we could.
I was a missionary for my church. Well, I had to come back from Fiji. I couldn't be a missionary with them anymore just to be safe, because I was an American citizen, so they brought all of us back to America, and I had to put my mission on hold.
West Coast Leather had just moved from a location we were on, Grant and Bush Street. So we were there for a couple years. Previously, we were in another location for 10 years. And so we were in a transition period. So this January, we found we had to move. We're the smallest retailer. Everyone else is corporate in Union Square. So we're the only small business that's really, you know, have a big impact here with our customers. And it's going against the big guys. Our business was doing great. We just signed the lease. Our first month was February. We had a very good month. And then immediately March hit, and news about how bad things were going in China. And, you know, things were spiraling where the actual downtown was like a ghost town, and our sales just dropped dramatically.
My name is Gabriel Zandass. I own Locals Barbershop in San Francisco, California. We've been open since July 1st, 2017. And the beginning of last year, January 1st, 2019, we moved next door to a bigger location, just because we were in the process of expanding. And, you know, everything was going pretty well. Things were going a little bit slow, but things were progressing. And now that this whole pandemic, this whole virus has been going on, it kind of put a halt to that dream.
My clients did not express concern until, well, there was concern, but the concern really rose when hospital policies denied them access to doula care when they were having their babies. And that happened very suddenly. Within days of the shelter in place is ordered by the San Francisco mayor and then the governor. Very quickly, all the hospitals decided that they would limit the amount of visitors that would be attending people in the hospital, would be visiting the people in the hospital. At first, I didn't think that it would apply to doulas because we are not visitors. We're there on a professional basis supporting our clients as they have their babies. But very quickly, we realized that, like doulas were being turned away. We had pregnant women crying and asking for their doulas to come in, during the midst of labor, and hospital staff denying us access. And it's still pretty much the same. Most of the hospitals in the Bay Area still only allow one person with a pregnant woman or a birthing person. And so the family has to choose between the doula or the pop or partner. Some families actually are choosing to let the doula go because the doula has specific skills to assist the partner through the labor that the partner does not possess. But it's very unfair. The partner should not have to give up the opportunity to see their baby born because of a rule like this. We should be considered essential workers and we should be working.
Well, I mean, I have been working from home now and homeschooling our 2 teenage daughters, which has had its ups and downs. It's been really hard for me to be so isolated. I tend to be more extroverted, and I've been impacted by just not having social interactions with people, not being able to see my students every day. I feel like I've been impacted by sitting more and looking at a screen all day. I get a little like cabin fever sometimes when I think about being forced to stay inside. I can't see my mom, I can't see my friends. So I would say most of the impact for me personally has been mental and emotional.
The shelter-in-place order that the mayor ordered, Mayor Breed, I think she was very smart. I think she had really good advice, and I think that she positioned the city to do the best that she could. West Coast Leather shouldn't be open when there's a pandemic. We are not essential. Our customers might think we're essential. We're not open, and we're abiding by all the rules and regulations of the city. Unfortunately, we've applied for every single thing that's available through the Small Business Administration, through grants, through more grants, through every aspect. The problem has been the federal government has not given West Coast Leather any correspondence about our small business loan, about our temporary small business loan, and it's been, no support for our business. So we are just, hanging on right now. We're a big special order, bespoke company, so we make things individually for the clients. We want to get back to working. We want our factories to be working, and we're going to follow all the rules. San Francisco is smart. San Francisco, the mayor did a good thing, and I think it's helped so that it's not out of control like New York.
It spreads very quickly because it attaches to these little proteins on our cells called Ace2 receptors. Now, we have receptors on all of our cells. Receptors mean where a chemical can attach to it and get inside of our cells. So if our cell needs something that's in our bloodstream, it has receptors that that thing can attach to and get in our bodies. These Ace2 receptors are interesting because they help modulate the blood pressure in our body. And so they're very necessary. Well, what this virus has done is it figured out a way to attach to those receptors on our cells, and that brings the virus inside of our cell. It's important to know that viruses can't reproduce. They can't survive outside of our cells. They have to get in, and then they hijack our cells and start producing themselves instead of the cells producing what they need to produce. There's no good evidence that animals play a role in this, and there's no evidence that a vector like a mosquito can spread it. So I've got it. The only way it can get to another person who's susceptible is by me spreading it to them. And the way it primarily spreads is through my respiratory tree. And it spreads very efficiently. It spreads probably about 10 times more efficiently than influenza, which is a very efficient respiratory virus for spreading.
My name is Mary Schindler, and I'm also known as Komi Komi in the capoeira community. I've been doing capoeira for 20 years. I lived in Brazil for a while, and capoeira is a very community-oriented and it's something that requires multiple bodies to participate. It's something that you can train by yourself, but it's not something that you can actually perform, do the ritual of capoeira alone. It's something that requires multiple people to create a circle of bodies, to play, to do the movements. So it's something that's hard, that's been difficult to transition into. the pandemic because now all the classes have been moved online. A lot of the people who teach capoeira are, native Brazilians. They're Black and brown folks, so they, and they're artists. They're teaching artists, and so that already puts them at a disadvantage in terms of like how they're impacted by the changes in the economy. So a lot of them have had to move their classes online, which has been, I think from what I've heard and seen, it's been somewhat successful. Luckily we have a strong community of people who support and are willing to do those online classes. And I don't know how that's going to look as things continue to move forward. So my concern is with them. And people are trying to be innovative and find other ways of being able to be outside, play music together, and stay connected.
I think communication with people. I think personal relationships, interaction, making sure that we reach out to people, especially with the people that we love and care about. Not just wait until a pandemic happens and then we start to reach out. I think that's something this pandemic kind of taught everybody.
So we don't have employees. Everyone in there's a runner. Everyone essentially has their own business within the barbershop. But we all work together to make our experiences and they're a lot more smoother and easier for all of us, for our clients and for ourselves, the workers. In total, there was about seven of us. Yeah.
So 7 local.
Not including myself. And anyone that's within the barbershop, who's a full-time employee there, or full-time barber, I'm sorry, is in the group chat. And we have Zoom meetings every once in a while just to stay afloat. We try to give each other information in order for us to kind of survive. Prior to the shelter in place being, put into play, some of us were in there already, like with a mask. We're wearing gloves. Because me and my dad, because he had hypertension, pulmonary hypertension, because COVID attacks your respiratory system. I didn't want to take any chances of bringing that virus with me back home, so I suited and booted. Even that last day, I was wearing one of those like masks for painters. I wasn't taking any chances, I was just like, Me personally, I was a little prepped for something like this, even though I didn't want to be. I have a lot of colleagues, a whole bunch of homies of mine that were still trying to work. They were in a situation where they had just a lot of barbershops just opened up like maybe a month ago, so they need to make ends meet. So it's one of those things where they're taking on a whole new responsibility. So I understand. I completely understand. There's no right or wrong in this one.
COVID-19 has taken our business away, essentially. We have made the effort to keep this 25% going through the window, is what I'm doing. Keeping the doors closed, but takeout bags, you can call in, you can have it delivered to your house. So it essentially took our business away. For this industry, for restaurants, for bars, this is going to be a very devastating time. We will not really see the hustle and bustle of a restaurant where everybody is so into each other and everybody's made friends and everybody talks to the next table. It's going to be very tricky. There's going to be a whole new norm now. It's not going to be the same. How long will that take? I don't know, but it's going to take some time. And I think that's what Shakewell was all about. It was like, it's full. It was like a busy New York restaurant and people are waiting and standing and talking and everybody gets along and everybody knows a neighbor. And I was like, oh my God, if I don't see that again, that's really going to hurt my feelings. That's what I've worked for 6 years to build, and it's a tough business, and we pulled it off. And again, that will also hurt half of my employees. If I have half a restaurant, where are they going to go? Because there's no jobs. So the whole thing is it's a mess, and it's going to take us a while to figure this out.
I live with my daughter who's 16. She's a high school junior, and my stepdaughter is in 8th grade. She's 13. My 16-year-old Anna, she struggled. She had to give up a lot of kind of like end of year traditions. She's on the advanced dance team at school, and they had to completely scrap their big dance concert. She missed her junior prom. she just took an AP test online, which is, it's crazy to me that this for-profit education company is still like insisting that students complete things like that. Shaylee, our 8th grader, she's missing her graduation ceremony. She didn't get to do any like end of year closure activities with her class. We watched both of our girls go through a couple of different phases. The first phase was like anger and grumpy moods, bad attitudes at home, feeling really upset, just a huge loss of their friends and their social structure. The second phase felt a little bit like vacation. Who needs a bedtime? Who needs a time to wake up? I can do a little bit of homework all day long. And then we tried to nudge them into having some kind of routine for your day, like wake up and change your clothes. And you're a student, you're just an online student now. I feel that I have been able to balance like work and home life, partially because our daughters are a little bit older and they're a little bit more self-directed. And I set myself a work day. Like I, get started in the morning around 8 a.m. and I usually wrap up around 3 or 4 p.m. and have just had to keep myself on track. I do feel like I have lucked out in this situation though. I mean, I have close friends who are homeschooling and teaching or working full time with a 6-month-old baby and a 6-year-old who are, they are both needing her full-time attention. And I have one friend in particular who works with at-risk youth from Bayview, Hunters Point, and Richmond. And she, like, those kids really, really need her, like, every single day, as do her own children. So I feel like I'm in a good situation, but I do know that there's a lot of parents out there who are struggling a little bit more with that balance.
The why people don't talk about it seriously is a complicated question. It's not that they don't know, because there have been studies that have now shown that more than 80% of the American population understands fundamentals about this virus, including how serious it is. So education is important for maybe another 20%, but education doesn't account for why we see people behaving badly. That is, not wearing masks, not social distancing, not taking the precautions they need to get infected. Psychologists tell us that what's playing a large role in people's behavior or lack of good behavior is denial. That is, we're confronted with something we don't want to have happen. We've been told, we know that our world has been turned upside down, that we can't live the life we used to live. No one, myself included, wants to hear that. So there's 2 ways to cope with that. Either you can say, I don't want to hear this, and I'm going to pretend it doesn't exist, or I'm going to just deny that it's so serious and go on living the way I lived. Or you can say, I don't want to hear this. I don't like what this is doing to my life and my family's life and my country, my community's life and my country's life and my world's life. But I know that I have a responsibility to myself to not get infected, and I have a responsibility to my community to not get infected. Because if I don't get infected, I can't spread it. So even though I don't like this, I'm going to act appropriately on this. And it turns out that the majority of people act like I just said. The problem is that there's a large minority of people who don't behave like that.
Yes, I am a barista at Starbucks. The store that I'm at closed like a week or so into Corona and like shelter in place. And then we only just recently reopened a couple of weeks ago. We have like a whole new system for you can't walk into the store anymore. You can just walk into the front entrance. You're encouraged to mobile order, no personal cups. We just like hand them the thing. Everyone has to wear a mask, and like there's hand sanitizer everywhere. It's very like procedure based, especially since I realized I was smiling at all the customers and they like couldn't even see it. It was like a really weird realization. It's just such a like weird experience, especially to be considered like an essential worker, because I don't feel like an essential worker. It's like a really strange title. I've seen customers on both sides like being either extremely like caring and understanding and like leaving us really generous tips, and then on the other side being really just like mean about it when it's like really not an essential thing. I would say be kind and patient, because now we have Starbucks is making less money, so less baristas are getting scheduled, so we have less people working, so things are taking a lot slower. Especially, we've gotten mobile orders of like 10 drinks that like will back us up for like 20 minutes, which is just like insane to me. So I'd say like just please be patient and kind, and remember that like most of us are like 16 to 25, and like we are being forced to work during this time period or not get paid. So I would just say like please be patient, especially if you're getting like coffee or fast food, which is like not something that's really very essential.
Prior to COVID, most of the hospitals would let you have at least like maybe 4 people with you when you came in to have a baby. So people could have their doula, they could have their husband or partner, grandma, best girlfriend, you know, and it would be a much more community event, more a sense of security for the birthing person, relaxing with people, because when it's time to have the baby, you're surrounded by medical people, you don't know them. You know, you've been seeing one OB throughout your pregnancy, but that person is hardly ever there when it's time for you to have your baby. So you're in a room full of strangers. So before COVID, generally 4 was the magic number of people that you could bring with you. So sure, you could have your doula, grandma, boyfriend, husband. Well, it's personally impacted me on many levels. I mean, the moment that I had a client that I had to walk to the hospital doors and leave her. I've been a doula for 40 years. That's never happened to me. And personally, it broke my heart. I can't even, I find myself feeling very emotional speaking about it again. It's just like, I make a sacred compact with my clients that I'm going to be there for them till they have their baby in their arms. So that to me is my days of crying and calling peers and getting support about how much that physically hurt me. And then the concern for my client that unfortunately sometimes medical folks are not as professional as we would like. Sometimes clients experience abuse, have medications forced on them. And, you know, knowing that if perhaps I was there, I could have helped allay that for my client is very painful as well. But the problem is that doulas didn't have the power to if the hospital won't let us in, we can't get in. Doulas are very definitely prepared to help in this crisis. The doula's present takes weight off of busy nurses. Nurses are tracking several birthing people at a time. And when a client has a doula, that's less work for the nurse to do. Because mostly people having a baby don't need medical assistance. They need physical assistance. Get me a sandwich, help me getting out of the tub, massage my back, pray, chant, dance, do all the stuff we do to help somebody have a baby. All that stuff is not medical, right? And a nurse, this is why so many people get offered medications, because if you have everybody like in bed, numb from the chest down, you can track 5 women at the same time much more easily than if you have 5 women who all need their back rubbed.
I was upset because I, wouldn't be able to see my friends, and also I didn't know how long it was gonna last. I actually really like homeschooling because I've been on top of my work and I've been focused because I don't have any distractions like in the classroom or anything like that.
I would say teachers have been impacted, first of all, by not having very much time to prepare. Our district was one of the last in the Bay Area to go into shelter in place. And we were given maybe 2 days of notice, and we know how to teach and we know our content, but teaching online has been a tremendous challenge that none of us were prepared or trained for. Many students still don't have access to the internet or to technology, so we have not been able to make contact with some of the students in our school district. Our high school district has around 9,000 kids, and about 25% of them, as of last Friday, were still not responding for various reasons. We have not been able to have synchronous learning because of the access and internet issues. So just posting assignments online and then hoping that students can find them or read them or turn them in feels absolutely impossible. It just feels like throwing something out into an abyss and hoping it comes back to you. It's been extremely frustrating and hard as a teacher, knowing that there's kids out there that are struggling and feeling like there's nothing that we can do.
I am a homestay mom. So.
And how has this personally affected you?
Honestly, I try to see positive out of it, so it doesn't affect me at all. I can say that.
Oh, okay.
Because it just makes you closer to family.
And how have your kids been taking it?
They're enjoying it to be with mom at home.
So
24/7 together.
How has the homeschooling experience been?
I don't like it. I didn't sign up for this. That part I do not like. I can't stand it. They don't have proper training to even do the Zoom and cancel the class 100 times and disappointing my children. So I don't like it. I really don't.
I wasn't ever like the kind of person that was like, I hate school. Like I like enjoyed learning, and I had like a lot of really close friends that I enjoyed seeing, and so I was like upset about not being in that school environment. Because at first we didn't even know that we couldn't go out and see each other. Like I thought that it was just gonna be 2 weeks of hanging out with my friends. But I was sad that like because there were some like people that I was friends with but like wouldn't hang out with outside of school, if that makes sense. So I was like sad I wouldn't get to see like all of those classmates. But at that time I still thought that I was just gonna be hanging out with my friends for 2 weeks. I was like always kind of wanted to be homeschooled because I thought it was just like sitting around doing nothing all day and like getting to eat whenever I wanted. But now at first it was like really difficult for me because I like had a hard time managing my own like stress levels and productivity and what I was doing. I procrastinate like so much. Like I can procrastinate till the absolute last minute and still get it done. So then I just continue procrastinating. So it's been difficult. I have like become the kind of person in a sense to like do something a week before it's done just because it like feels good to get something done. And I like never thought that I would be someone like that, but it's just helped during Corona because it started to feel really overwhelming. I was seeing assignments posted every day, but I would never check because I just didn't want to like have to deal with it, if that makes sense. So I've kind of turned around like the way that I approached my schoolwork and homework. And so I'm hoping to continue that like more productive approach when like regular school resumes.
Well, the most vulnerable students during this pandemic are for sure our historically underserved students, low-income students, newcomers, students in our foster care system, students who are living in potentially single-parent homes or living with other family members who might not be equipped to support them. Students with access or technology issues. We have students, again, our district has distributed hundreds of hotspots, but we still didn't even have enough for everyone in our district of 9,000 kids. And I would say students who are troubled by mental health issues, they are also the most vulnerable. I think this crisis can exacerbate any like depression or anxiety issues that might already be in place. Students who are on the autism spectrum, they may not be living in homes who can support their needs and help them manage the day-to-day tasks. I don't think that families are necessarily equipped to handle or to provide the support that educators are trained to give.
And let me begin today by simply saying thank you to the American people. And thank you for the way that people across this country, 7 days into 15 days to slow the spread, that people in communities large and small across America are responding, are cooperating, are communicating, not just on behalf of their own health and the health of their family, but more importantly, on behalf of the most vulnerable among us. So on behalf of your president and our entire task force, just thank you to the American people.
We did see it coming. I've been teaching infectious diseases at UC Berkeley for 40 years. And I lecture on pandemics, and I've told my students for years that, we're going to see pandemics, and some are going to be worse than others. This is the fourth pandemic we've had in the United States since the new century. We've had SARS, MERS, influenza H1N1 in 2009, and now COVID-19. Fourth pandemic in 20 years. So pandemics occur. So, and it's not like I knew this and no one else knew this. All of my colleagues in my field know this. Doctors know this in general. As a matter of fact, it was either October or November, pandemic preparedness, a whole program for that was presented to the White House, and it was completely ignored.
I think COVID-19 for everyone is in this business. If you didn't just close your doors and wait it out and say a prayer and hope that you have enough revenue and resources to open back up, I went the other route and said, let's keep this going because it's a lot easier to maintain than it is to start over. And again, I think we're far enough into it, and success-wise, we're not starting over. We have our methods down, but we have to kind of build it back up. And we have to build back up our people because our clientele may be like, nervous to go out. Not that anyone predicted, and I didn't have in my business plan a pandemic, and I didn't have pandemic in my liability insurance, and of course, no one really knew what this would be. How do we get billions of applications for unemployment in? How do we get billions of these small SBA loans submitted and accepted? It can't happen overnight. I knew that, but they certainly need to make it happen a little faster so people are not homeless. I mean, I have employees that have not received a check in 4 weeks. So where do they go from here? Again, thank you, Newsom, for putting us down early, because I think if he allows us to do this, it will generate a little more life too. We need some life. Yesterday, I dressed up. I was like, you know what? I'm going to put a nice crisp shirt on because I look like not a slob, but I've been in a Shapewear t-shirt for so long. I'm like, I want to make myself look pretty. And I didn't. I walked in and was like, oh, you look great, boss. Right off the bat, to all small businesses, I mean, everything, I was almost bombarded with grants, applications, loans, SBA. So the largest one we're looking at is the PPP Act.
The coronavirus has affected West Coast Leather. You know, it's devastating. In reality, there's been zero support, zero communication, and it's a terrible feeling because obviously you need aid. We need loans. We need the low interest loans. We need to qualify for a grant. I mean, we have 5 employees. We employ these people, the vendors and the workers that make our things, and also subcontractors that are, not going to be, compensated, and we won't have any work for them. I mean, I don't anticipate doing any photo shoots or fashion shows were canceled. We had a big fashion show with Bose for a new headset for a tech fashion segment. So we had just done Black History Month with T-Mobile. We were honored because we have such a history of helping the artists. And we did a great show at their corporate store. That was just towards the end of February. Once March hit, I mean, really there was nothing going on. And it's been like that. We're not fully online in terms of every style that we have. So we're making adjustments to get every single item that's in our inventory online. That's probably the biggest thing that I can do going forward, and to have customers come in one at a time or maybe 2. We do have a beautiful big store that we just built, and we put in so much effort to get this store open. The day-to-day operation for West Coast Leather is 100% changed. We're not open. We're a retail walk-in customer. People come from all over the world. The tourists aren't here. So, we're not able to open. Someone would have to go onto the internet or email us or call, and we can still send them pictures of all of our information and styles and things like that. But there is no operation, and we're completely shut down. We just are paying the bills that we have, and we're looking for a retail recovery. The thing about leather is you have to try it on, and our clothes fit different because we're very fitted, and the way we manufacture it's very strong. It has power. We take a lot of pride in the integrity of the manufacturing, and every little detail is important to us.
Well, what we've been doing now is that all of our prenatal visits are being done over Zoom. And It's been challenging, but we've still been able to make good connections with the clients. We will do laboring with them in their home, early labor with them at home, and then we will go with them to the hospital, and then we have to leave them until these policies change. And then we follow up with them after the baby is born. While they're in the hospital, my clients can reach me by text, by Zoom, by FaceTime, whatever the hospital's internet will allow. I can say, that the frustration has been knowing that that additional support that the client was hoping to receive that I can't provide. I have an obligation to the client emotionally, spiritually, and contractually. And so that's been broken by an outside entity. The state is coming in and telling me that I can't fulfill my obligation to my client. That's horrible. My clients overall have been very understanding, and I'm very grateful for that. And they know that I still am giving them 110% within these confines, but that's been very challenging. And also hearing in the greater community, and especially African American clients and poor clients, that they're having inductions, medical starting of their labor before they could naturally go into labor on their own, that they're actually being encouraged to have their labors induced. Oh, go ahead, you might as well go ahead and get induced in case you catch COVID. So you might as well just have your baby now. The thinking of that is crazy, because induction can take like 3-4 days in the hospital. So the hospital is the place where all the germs are, right? The natural birth for a first-time mom average is 24 hours. So you want to get the birthing person in and out of hospital ASAP. The natural birth is the way to go.
Okay, we have 4% of the world's population. We have 25% of the cases and 25% of the deaths. South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, they were all hit very hard by SARS-CoV-1. They made a commitment that they were not going to get hit hard again when a pandemic struck. They funded adequately their public health systems. They were prepared for a pandemic, whereas the United States was not. They have a society where there's trust with authority, where the United States does not trust authority. I think it's the president of Taiwan is a doctor, as I recall, trained in epidemiology. The person who's running the the pandemic preparedness in South Korea is a physician who's highly respected, and the government defers to her decisions. So these are societies that have approached the problem very differently. And their community and the people who live in those societies have a trust in their government. We have non-scientists running the programs here in the United States. People, not only non-scientists, but the people like Trump and all, who don't believe in science. And we have the population that the tradition in this country is not to trust authority anyway. Some of that's for good reason, some of it's not. But that individualism is the last thing that works in the face of a pandemic.
I do not think that our federal government did a good job of preparing us at all. I believe that our governor did the best he could, and I also believe that going into shelter in place so soon compared to other states did positively impact the way the virus spread in California. But again, I don't think that we had no precedent for this, and I think we tried as much as we could to get ahead of like the food issues and equity and the access, but really there was no real way to prepare.
Realistically, it's that. I mean, that's the biggest one. That's the biggest fear, right? Can I stay afloat? Can I pay, for certain, expenses, or can I afford certain expenses that we're being told to pay right now? Like, that's the biggest one. That, and I'm realistic, just like anyone else, man. We need to pay our rent, some food, but I think it can be done. It's just, I don't know, man. I think there's a lot of blockage in the way. I don't think no one's willing to sacrifice. I don't think, and by anyone, I'm talking about the government. I'm talking about they're not willing to take a hit. Like, the moral correct thing to do is to pay people outright. But there's been so many, it's like, no, there's funding. They claim that there needs to be funding that has to be taken away from certain other programs and other, organizations and all that. Screw it. Do it. Help your people, because at the end of the day, they are your economy. And eventually they will trust you. If you do this right now in that time of need, they will help, they will trust you. At the end of the day, it's like, if that's not being implemented, now at this point, now you're just getting this. You're never gonna get solve the problem by having, I know in science, you get two negatives, you get a positive. If you get two negatives in real life, it ain't gonna work out. I think the government needs to step away from numbers and facts to just trusting the human heart and the soul and the way people, show their emotions. This is all emotional attachment to it. People are scared. People are fearing shit. There needs to be a lot more leadership, and there has to be a little bit of sympathy and empathy for these scenarios right now. But there isn't. So that's why I've done a lot of individuals who be like, screw that. If you're not going to help me, then I'm going to go do whatever I can. What's going to happen? People are going to go back to work. They're already talking about lifting this whole shelter in place. What's that going to do? Yeah, it might seem okay, but next thing you know, one person gets infected. Let's say you go into a barbershop. Next thing you know, now it infects the whole barbershop. All those individuals go back home, they infect the whole family. Those people, and then it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse, and then we're back at square one. But they don't look at it in the long run. They look at it as like, oh, how can we save money right now? It's like, screw the saving money part. You save for times like this, especially like the government.
I've actually kind of liked it. Despite all like the many deaths and cases and like hardships that come with it, but like just like the day-to-day things, like a quieter world, a world focused more on family, focusing on more like important things instead of money. I think that's a really good thing.
Well, federal officials were getting into the world of Trump, so I don't know what to say about that. No, I don't think they did a good job. I think that they let a lot of time lag and filled people with a lot of misinformation and didn't listen to they have the best scientists in the world, and he's not, wasn't listening to them. And it causes a lot of confusion for people. People don't know what to believe or how to go. And then, it just eroded people's confidence that they needed to have in order to either comply with the laws and, take steps. If the rules change every day, then you disregard the rules, so they don't mean anything. Right. But I think on a state level and in the San Francisco Bay Area level, I think it was responded to very, very professionally. Every day, Gavin Newsom was giving, and still is giving press conferences where they were doing beautiful social distancing during the conferences, and so setting a good example for the population, as well as telling everything as best they could. And they were very clear, like, okay, this is changing from yesterday. Bear with us. We are telling you what we know as we know it. So the honesty was really refreshing. And so people could kind of find their feet. Even the order that came down from the San Francisco Board of Health, the way it was written left room for doulas to keep working. It was the hospital, how the hospitals interpreted it, that excluded doulas. In their document, it says that people who are important or integral to the health and welfare of a patient should be allowed in. Well, that should be a slam dunk for the doulas.
I think West Coast Leather needs to access the Small Business Administration loan. I think that, we applied for that immediately, and we applied for the quick relief, and there's a different application. So we've submitted these, and we called, and they don't even have West Coast Leather as pending. We're like lost in space. no communication, no follow-up. You call, and I said, well, should I apply again? And she goes, no, that will deactivate your earlier application. Well, that was 6 weeks ago. And, this is emergency. This is a disaster for everyone. The small business is what's going to drive the company. And if half the country or 40% of the country is a small business, they don't need to give Ruth Chris $20 million. Those companies shouldn't be applying. They need to work off their reserves, or they need to sell some of their own stock. Come on, there's a lot of little guys like us that are, serving the community, keeping people employed.
Yes, they have. They're taking it very seriously, and I'm very happy that everything is going well, and I'm happy the way people in Oakland, San Francisco, San Jose. I'm happy the way they're taking it. they see the thing is hitting a lot of friends and family that they know, and they're taking it very seriously. My family, we've been very, very indoors and staying really safe. So we all told each other, we want to be able to come out and celebrate with other people that are, okay after this whole thing is over. Even if everything opens up, people might not really want to come too close to each other for the next couple of months. And I don't think they should do big concerts like they said. I think if everybody still stays 6 feet apart from each other for the next 2, 3, 4 months, everything is going to be okay. It's going to be very different. Hugging is going to be weird. Shaking hands is going to be weird. Relationships are going to be hard. Those people that are single before they could get into relationships now is going to be really, a lot of people are going to be scared, so it's going to be very crazy.
I don't want there to be a new normal. I want the old normal, but it's going to take a long time to get back to that. I think we very, very gradually need to open up school and work. If we revision what it looks like to go to a concert or a movie. And that needs to just be done very slowly over time. Maybe still some more virtual stuff for now, and then slowly having people distanced out from each other in the movie theater and just easing back into it. Ultimately, I would like it to be, we have a relationship with this virus like we have a relationship with all the other viruses that we're used to. The issue with corona is that it's new to humanity. And so now we're rocketing, our immune systems are being rocketed, trying to figure out, how do I process this? And unfortunately, in American culture, we have so many people who have underlying health issues. This is a reminder to us that we need to get healthier as a nation. Smoking and being obese and these other issues make us vulnerable to all kinds of attack. We need to, as a culture, take a look at the issues of racism and white supremacy that puts undue stress on African American people that make them prone to hypertension and diabetes, which are underlying conditions that make us vulnerable to this virus and other illnesses as well, not just coronavirus. So, if we heed the warnings and if we up our game around health and up our game around truly being a respectful society, which we're not now. We're a very violent society. If we do those things in time, I would like us to go back to our own normal where we can, walk around, not have to wear masks all the time, go to a flick, hold hands with people that you don't live with, hug your grandma. I'm a grandma, I like to get hugged. So, my goal is to not embrace and curl up with the way things are right now. The goal is to get back to normal, but do that in a sensible, reasonable, and science-based way.
For fall, I think it will be a little more restrictive, possibly still just all online learning. We are hoping for the spring to be blended, where they might go into a small class one day a week, have a couple of online classes during the week, and then a few self-directed projects. We're looking at actually having students be in a pod or small group, maybe 1 teacher to 10 students or 1 teacher to 15 students, where they stay with that group all day long. So I might be your English and history teacher. So I might like give you direct instruction on those classes. And then I might support students in a computer lab doing their online math, science, and their elective. We're looking at possibly having these pods. I know it sounds so like futuristic, but possibly having the pods have lunch together, do some kind of like outdoor activity or PE class together, just to try to minimize the contact or like new people coming into the situation. We're definitely looking at some kind of temperature taking happening every morning. Whether it's through like some thermal scanning device or even just like a little forehead strip. We're looking at asking students to stay home from school for 5 days if anyone in their family or the group that they live with are exhibiting any signs of a potential virus. I think those are just some of the things. We're just trying to figure out, like, how do kids go to the bathroom? How do kids get to school? What does drop off and pickup look like? I feel like there's a lot of questions out there, but I can say that it will be different.
I think that is likely going to be the aftermath of this pandemic. And that is that we're going to recognize that we can't go back to where we were before. We need to have a healthcare system that has the reserve capacity in all the respects we were talking about, from PPE to beds to ventilators, etc. We need to have a public health system that is not politicized and that is adequately funded and prepared to take on the next pandemic. And we need to assure that we don't elect horrific leaders like we have today in Washington. Those are things that we have control over and that I think we can learn from this.
The last time we spoke was maybe like in the beginning of COVID. So obviously one of the biggest ones was dealing with my father's death. Everything else disappeared. You know, like, honestly, I didn't give a shit about anything. Maybe that could have been like my, what's that word? My pillow as to why I was so numb to the actual world going through the fire and destruction that I went through because of COVID. I don't really have emotion at that point in my life. So when COVID was happening, I kind of took COVID as like almost like, all right, well, we gotta fucking get through this, you know? We gotta keep pushing, we gotta do whatever we need to do in order to make it happen.
A year and a half ago, we started this little documentary, and here we are in, what are we in? Almost August of 2021. What I think all restaurants and retail have learned is creativity. So how do you make it work for you as a business and still produce food, takeout items, a window, outdoor dining? The whole thing was a creative way to stay afloat. There's no other way to think about it. But now we get to come back to a little reopening. We have half the restaurant. We have about 9 tables inside and then a complete patio built in 4 parking spots out front.
You know, it was just a lot of fear in the whole situation. You know, everyone reacts differently. We didn't discontinue, manufacturing or working, but we just had to abide by everything with, with the city and the state and just the guidelines. And we were just taking it day by day. We were officially closed for about a month and a half. And then came around the civil unrest during the riots and the looting and the George Floyd. And unfortunately, West Coast Leather in San Francisco, did get broke into in the civil unrest in the city. And so when that happened, it was just another dramatic punch that we took. And we just had to kind of pivot. We had to regroup, and we reached out to all the politicians, to the mayor's office, to the Senator Wiener. So we kept, using the resources that a small business would, as opposed to just going into a panic mode. And our customers have supported us this whole time. So now it's been, a year and 3 months, and we have survived by the people of California have really supported us.
I think we have taken the first year very seriously. We as Shakewell, the restaurant, the business, with protocols of CDC and masks and rubber gloves, we took that as far as we could, between vaccinations and where we stand as a country or a world, and then as a county where we are, we have reopened a bit. And I think for Shakewell, it's still that very precautious way of doing it. We're not full on. We still require masks inside. We feel like we're not done here. So you just can't say as of June 15th, all of a sudden, oh, everything's done. We are done with COVID and it's gone away and everything's back to normal. There is not going to be normal for quite some time still. So I think the masks thing is very important right now. That's how we're going to roll, and we're going to roll with how, as a business, we respect our employees. We make sure that they are not scared and not nervous about having maskless people like inside. So we're keeping these rules going, but to see where we are as a reopening thing, we are there. Like, I think right now, all of the country, but especially hospitality, retail, we're finding a very hard time to find a team to help us out. So we've restricted kind of our volume and our capacity to the help we have and what we can produce from the kitchen to the front. Again, reopening, we've reopened, yes, but not to where other parts of the country are reopened. Like, I think there's some places that shouldn't be doing what they're doing because we don't know. We've seen this Delta thing. We've seen the Olympics go down because if there's more cases. We've seen the vaccinated still acquire. So we've got to be smarter, not to go backwards. No one wants to close another restaurant again. That's for sure. And no restaurant owner probably can handle it. And yes, funding from the federal government absolutely helped. It kept us alive. So we really do appreciate that. But could that happen again? So I think I would just go to the beach this time, to be perfectly honest with you. So yeah, again, we're taking the reopening stage very slow.
I think we opened up too late. We closed from March 15th all the way to September 20 something, right? Or September 15th. And then we opened back up and then we closed back down on December 4th. And then we were allowed to reopen in February of, mid-February of 2021, which is today's year. That little time frame was the stupidest thing that we had to deal with. It's like we already had a plan. We were following rules, laws, everything that they were throwing at us. And then in the snap of fingers, we're told that we can't operate again. And yet I just invested, God knows how much money into, making the place COVID proof sort of thing. Let alone now we're dealing with this Delta variant that is supposedly more worse, but yet we're still allowed to work. I feel like our leaders could have done a little bit more to push. I mean, you look at some of the counties that dealt with the crap that they dealt with when they opened, but I don't want to be an asshole answering like this, but it's like, shit's going to come our way and we have to figure it out. As humans, we adapt to things.
Well, I believe in the science behind the vaccines for people, and I feel like there's too much misinformation. As a business owner, you probably wish that you're open sooner. I think the mayor did the right thing to protect the city, and they were allowed smaller retailers to open, like one customer or one group at a time. So we just followed all the rules and regulations. Gosh, the reopening process was probably the most talked about thing for the small business, across the country and in San Francisco, because there were more precautions taken and the numbers were lower. The frustration of the length of the time, didn't change. It was still extremely frustrating. You didn't know how can you continue with not helping clients? And people were actually, quite nervous to come in also. Could it have been a little sooner? I'm not a person that goes back and dwells on this or that. I try to take the positive outlook.
To me, nothing is essential, right? The only thing that I consider essential: food, water, lights, electricity, to live. So for you to tell me that my business, at first I was very open to the idea of like, you know, barbershops, okay, not essential. Starbucks, essential? Fuck no. Ain't no one need a fucking frappuccino or like a latte in the middle of the fucking day, you know? Like, if you're gonna shut it down, shut it down. Don't try to prioritize one business over the other. You're gonna tell me that I can't operate, but that the business next to me, just because they serve fucking cookies and brownies all day, they can operate?
It's surprising how nice the people are that cared about like a small business and the people that supported small business. You have to really take a hard look at your whole life, you know, and see, well, what are you gonna do? You know, how are you gonna pivot? What changes will you make? Because, you know, who's not to say it might not happen again, and nobody wants to ever go through this. It's a process.
That's a hard one, because we did a pretty good job. As far as location, like for the Bay Area where I'm in, I think we all have a little more of an edge on what's the right thing to do. So I really feel like we did the right thing. I feel like not hanging out around people and unfortunately closing businesses and not getting our hair cut and not being able to go to the movies was a smart thing to do to not spread this virus. I think everybody has really done a good job trying to do that. It's not easy. And, you know, we again have instructions that we're just following because nobody's ever been really around for such a weird time.
Here's the crazy part about it. You know, I'm not vaccinated, you know, at all. And not to say I'm against it, not to say I'm with it. This is just me. I just personally don't feel comfortable. I rarely take Tylenol. It's just something that's always been embedded in me now, right? But I'm not going to sit here and judge anyone that's vaccinated or not. From my perspective, we have to come from an understanding standpoint. And that's why I wear a mask when I'm cutting hair at all times, both locations. Has COVID gotten me to the point where I'm making decisions sometimes, like irrational decisions? I wouldn't say irrational, but I definitely do think we need to start moving, you know, progressively, you know, and we need to come from an understanding standpoint, whether it's, you know, if my client he wants to wear a mask, hey, wear a mask, whatever you want. If you don't want to wear a mask, I'm not going to hold you to it. I think that's one of the main things that we've kind of like put into our business, because it's so personal that we have to make people feel, you know, comfortable sitting in our chairs.
Well, we were one of the first stores to be fully vaccinated. So all of our team were vaccinated. Yeah, I mean, there's certainly uncertainty with it, with the unvaccinated. You know, we have customers that are in the hospital that are unvaccinated. We have friends that were in the hospital, you know, for a long time. You know, it's just like, okay, well, you're from the Bay Area. Most of the people are educated. You know, get your vaccination and, you know, try to keep everybody, you know, safer. But yes, there is certainly an uncertainty with variants, and we don't want to take a step back.
COVID-19 has not gone away yet. So yeah, we all are concerned every day of what could it affect next. Absolutely nobody wants to close down again, because that would probably ruin all of us. We survived 12, 13, 14 months with a takeout, with no indoor dining. So we creatively made that way, and we made it. So we're very blessed and happy and thankful, but we're not through yet. We still have a ways to go, and until the day comes where, is there going to be a norm? I don't know. You know, I think there's going to be a mask in everybody's backpack or back pocket for quite some time, and it's weird because, like, really, I never thought in this lifetime I would see anything like this. So it's been an experience. So right now, you will see at Shakewell, we did have to change a lot of our style, our system. Still the best food, still a hospitality driven. But again, we are doing this online Toast tab, it's called. So your menu, your order, your payment is all on your phone. We've learned to just creatively technology innovate. We have obviously put up a outdoor patio like most people have in the country, which is awesome and generates much business. Allowing our few tables inside, again with the staff I have to do it with, is we're busy, and it's amazing. So if we had Shakewell before and an outdoor patio, it's going to be something crazy. Like, I don't know if my kitchen can handle that.
You know, we were always one of those stores that you came to and you we were fitted, you work with the stylist or the person, or for example, for me, if you wanted something custom. And so that has remained the same. We have put a lot of energy into our online sales, and during the time when we were closed, like that was all the energy that we were putting in. So our online sales have increased. We kind of keep it private and we rely on the referrals.
I get asked a lot, like, it was maybe more, not what I learned, it's maybe what more I appreciated. And I appreciated running water. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm like, you know what? I can't get a haircut. I can't have a pedicure. I can't go anywhere, but I can shower. I was like, oh my God, this is such a luxury. Why we take so much for granted. I just learned like what we have is really a lot. And we do take a lot for granted, and we're spoiled. We're totally spoiled.
I mean, there are a lot of positive, and that's when you're a retailer, you know, you're gonna look at the positives. It's the fact that people like to support a small business. You know, just being a survivalist, the people are happy to see us. So that's a positive. And
the biggest one for me, appreciate the little things. Appreciate the moments you have in front of you. And I say that because obviously that ties into my dad, you know, because, you know, before he passed, and keeping it very real with you, like there's a lot of things that I wish I should have appreciated a little bit more about him, or at least embraced about him, to make him feel comfortable, make him feel great about what he is and what he's built and what he's embedded in me and my brother and our little family, you know, at the end of the day. And that's something that he wasn't scared to do. He wasn't scared to live. And that's the one thing I definitely miss about him. So out of this whole fucking COVID scenario, if you have someone who sits there in front of you who's loving you, love them back. You know, if you have someone who's gonna ride and die with you, you better do the same thing for them, you know? Yeah, that's one thing. Appreciate the little shit, yeah.